so glad to have you. And we are really glad to have our guest today, who's all the way from the other side of the ocean in Denmark, I believe, Lama Tantrapa. And I had a short conversation with this man a few weeks ago, and we had to get him on the show because he is fascinating. And I mean, the list of things about him just blows my mind. He is the holder of the lineage of Qi Dao. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Qi Dao.
And Qi Dao. And you know what has really blew my mind is that you said that you fostered your clan for 27 generations. So this
Well, not
practice,
me personally.
but
It's my family.
yeah, but this has stayed in your family for 27 generations,
Right.
correct?
Yes.
And I mean, that is something that is, I'm not in this day and age, that's unique. I mean, it really is for something to be passed down because usually there's that one generation, I don't want to deal with this stuff anymore. That's old stuff. I want the new stuff. Tell us about that. Tell us about yourself, this fascinating trip that you've been on.
Oh, it's been a trip, all right. Well, my grandfather was a grandmaster. So he was an amazing martial artist,
Hmm.
one of the top martial artists in the country at that time. And by country, I mean the former Soviet Union.
Hmm.
He was one of my primary teachers. So he obviously taught me a lot of things from a relatively young age. I started at the tender age of 6, receiving some of his lessons. And at first, it was, just kind of a play. And he was like a superhero in my eyes, and I wanted to be like him when I grew up. Lo and behold, I grew up and I am maybe not quite like him. He was very athletic. So he was shorter, but very muscular, like a
Hmm.
gymnast. And I'm not as muscular, even though I'm quite strong. But I still followed his footsteps in some respect. I didn't work for the government like he used to. He quit. Once Stalin died, he used to train Stalin's bodyguards. And so once Stalin died, he was like, I don't want to work for the KGB. I don't want to teach any more spooks. So he basically quit and refashioned his career. It became an accountant,
Wow.
the kind
Interesting.
of accountant
Hmm.
that you don't want to argue with.
Yeah.
And I didn't become an accountant. I also considered working in some kind of governmental position because growing up in the communist regime, that was basically the only reasonable option to consider. My
Mhm.
other grandparents were lawyers. The other grandfather of mine was a district attorney for the Crimea Peninsula in Ukraine. My grandmother was a judge.
Wow.
Both of my parents are PhDs in engineering, also worked for the government all their lives. So basically, I thought, okay, maybe I will do something. And I decided
Wow.
I wanted to be a career diplomat. I wanted to travel the world on the government's dime. And um, then the country fell apart. And I didn't feel like I wanted to be a diplomat representing any of the smaller countries
Mhm.
that were the result of this fallout. And I basically just went full bore into spirituality, into pursuit of personal and spiritual development.
So
I've
he
been
went
studying
from
already with
he went from
some of
doing
the monks and the top experts in personal development that I came across. And my grandfather pointed out a few of his friends and colleagues. And so I studied with them. And so basically, I just decided I'm going to dedicate my life to this path.
Mhm.
so that's interesting because he went from the doing the spiritual martial arts work. Yes, I know he's doing the training for the combative stuff too, but so he went from that to conventional career, and then you went from conventional career to spiritual path. You did it the opposite. So what was the breaking point then, or moment of clarity that made you say, that this is the path you want to go, and led you into the dream yoga stuff that you do? That was the
Well, it
answer.
actually happened when I was in the military service. I was
Hmm.
in special forces and Spetsnaz, and we were doing search and rescue, kind of mopping up things
Mhm.
after the war in Afghanistan. So the troops were getting withdrawn, but some of them were lost in the mountains. Some of them were POWs. Some of them were just kind of missing in action and needed to be rescued or exfiltrated sometimes. And so that's what we were doing. We're basically, some people say, "Oh, what kind of Tibetan Lama are you? You were killing people." And I was like, "Oh, I was actually saving people's lives. So it was a bodhisattva work."
Hmm.
And I was a sergeant, and one of my soldiers stepped on a landmine right in front of me.
Oh,
And so
wow.
I got hit and spent almost a week in a coma. And during that time, I experienced just amazing dreams. And those dreams were very vivid. I could not tell that I was dreaming, even though I had
Mm.
studied dream yoga before then. But it was really difficult to even tell that I was in a dream because everything was so realistic and it went on and on like a whole lifetime in a dream. And then something would happen to me in that dream, and I would find myself in a different dream. And that
Mm.
over and over again. And I was like, interesting. I remember I was having a dream in which I was experiencing a whole lifetime in a totally different place and in different body, sometimes as a man, sometimes as a woman. And that it would be a lot of just seemingly disjointed experiences. And so at one point, I woke up. So um, I woke up in bed and I look around and I'm like, what kind of place is this? Then I realized, oh, it's a field hospital. It's a field hospital somewhere in the mountains. And there's nobody in the tent, the big tent,
Mhm.
where there were some cots or basically like hospital beds. And it looked like people just left, didn't make beds, which doesn't happen in the military very often. And
Right.
I'm like, what happened here? So I'm looking around and I feel totally fine in my body. And I was like, not even a scratch on me. And so I'm walking around and it looks like people just drove off. It was still dust kind of settling down. And I was like, where did they go? They left me here. That's not okay. And so I went down. There was dirty, not dirty, but dusty road, kind of in the canyon. And the canyon was making a turn. And as it turned, I could see kind of into the valley, but not really well. And so I was like, well, I need to get a better view of the situation. And so I saw this big rock outcropping, and I figured I need to climb this to get a better view of that valley. And I used to do rock climbing, so I felt relatively comfortable climbing without any gear, just freestyle up this uh, sheer vertical rock face. And when you're dreaming, if you pay attention to your dream body, it actually helps you become awake or lucid in the dream. Well, that's
Hmm.
exactly what I had to do because I was climbing, and obviously I had to pay attention to myself and how I'm using my body. And I realized I was dreaming. And I was like, I don't have to climb this rock. I can just fly to the top of it. You know, most of us have had some flying dreams, right? So
Hmm.
I pushed myself away from that rock, but for some reason, gravity still worked
Oh,
in my
snap.
dream and it pushed me down.
You have to be
Oh,
really
no.
specific about that. When you're lucid dreaming, you have to be very, very
Oh,
specific about
man.
what you want.
No kidding. So I hit the ground and I woke up. I woke up again in bed,
Wow.
again in the field hospital. But
Wow.
now there are actually some people around me, and I see a couple of nurses talking to each other, and one of them noticed that I was kind of opening my eyes and wiggling, and she was like, "Oh, this one just woke up. Check it out." And I'm like, "I know I'm dreaming. I know this is a dream.
Wow.
You're not gonna fool me." And she was like, "Ah, okay, now he's gonna need a psychiatrist." And sure, obviously, with some PTSD, I needed some psychiatry, but I didn't take any drugs. I basically healed myself of PTSD
Mhm.
Wow.
with the help of dream yoga, with the help of other practices I know. And so that basically kind of gave me a really clear sense that I do have some degree of self-mastery, something that
Mhm.
a lot of meditators and spiritual um, students of spirituality would kill for, metaphorically
Right.
Hmm.
speaking.
Mhm.
So that basically gave me a real clear idea that I have something that I would like to offer to others. Plus, of course, having trained from early childhood really helped. So basically, I decided that's what I want to do. So I started studying with several lamas who lived in Siberia, studied with a Japanese monk, apprenticed to him for like a year and a half to almost 2 years.
Mhm.
Hmm.
I was his bodyguard and chauffeur and interpreter. He was traveling through Russia and Ukraine, and eventually he got banned from Russia, got blacklisted.
Really?
So he ended up actually uh, kind of folding the project of building a peace pagoda in downtown Moscow, Russia. And instead, we went to Ukraine, which is where I was born and raised anyway. So that was
Mhm.
relatively convenient for me. And then um, I also started a bodyguarding company. So I figured, well, I know how to do this stuff. I can protect not only Buddhist monks, but other people. And at that time, Ukraine was a tough place, still is. And
Yeah.
um, some businessmen were trying to come to the country and do some business, and some of them would get kidnapped. And so my job was essentially to keep them from getting kidnapped,
Wow.
which I did
Wow.
for a while, for well over a year until I got kidnapped myself. And spent
Wow.
3 days in the root cellar
Wow.
waiting for somebody to basically pay ransom for me, which they did.
Hmm.
My business partner sold our company in 3 days.
Wow.
And
Wow.
my portion of the proceeds went to ransom me out. And so
Wow.
after that, I was like, this bodyguarding thing is not working so well for me. Maybe I
Hmm.
need to change my career again.
Wow.
So anyway, that's basically was read before I decided I would go to the US. And so I did. I came to the US to teach martial arts in 1995 and then applied for religious asylum and actually became the first Ukrainian Lama who received religious asylum in the US.
Wow.
That's pretty cool. Wow.
Hmm. Wow.
Very
So,
cool.
so now you've taken these experiences and you've taken all this training, and now you're offering it to your clients. So, what specifically? I mean, like for example, you were talking about dream yoga. Tell us what dream yoga is and what that can do for a person, and how is it different from other forms of yoga?
Well, so other forms of yoga are like, with all due respect, they're like undergraduate level of training, maybe,
Hmm.
Hmm.
maybe just a freshman year.
Okay.
If you think about it,
Okay.
you need to get 200 hours to become a certified yoga teacher.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Right.
I rest my
Yeah.
case.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I am doing is more like graduate and even more likely postgraduate level of education for yoga practitioners, as well as practitioners of martial arts, Qigong, meditation, and various wellness disciplines. Essentially, what it does, it gives you the ability to experience several things in a very accelerated way. On one hand, it's a shortcut to enlightenment. I'm not joking
Okay.
when I say this
Cool.
because what's enlightenment? Well, it's the experience of becoming awake in this big dream we call life.
Hmm.
That's why Buddha goes by that nickname or by that title, because it literally means the awake one in Sanskrit. What
Right.
did he wake up? How did he wake up? Well, he basically meditated a whole bunch. Now, some people say, oh, I don't have time to meditate for this many years as Buddha did. Some people say, um, I can't even meditate. Every time I try to meditate, my monkey mind just gets busy jumping from one subject to another, and I cannot really sit still. Uh,
Mhm.
Attention deficit disorder is a big pandemic these days. So basically, there's
Hmm.
no question about how the attention span of humans is actually getting shorter and shorter every day.
Right.
What Dream Yoga offers is essentially recognition that, yeah, it is not easy to meditate. And it's not necessary to meditate it in the way that most people try to do it. Instead of suppressing the mind from daydreaming, essentially any thought about the past or about the
Mm.
future is a form of a daydream, right? Even
Right.
when you think about the present moment, whether you're thinking about what's going on with this guy or what's going on on the other side of the world or what does this person think of me? It's all daydream. It's all projection. It's all a figment of our imagination.
Hmm.
And so that basically tells you something that whatever you're thinking about, it's a daydream. Ah, well, daydreams can become lucid, just like night dreams can become lucid. We can experience awakening to the dreamlike nature of our mental processes and become awake in the dream without quitting the dream. So we can
Mhm.
continue dreaming, but now we become lucid. And
Very.
that actually brings the best of both worlds together. On one hand, there are some guys like Eckhart Tolle and the ilk who talk about presence.
Hmm.
Well,
Right.
he made millions of dollars talking about presence. It's actually it's actually a pretty much a fool's errand because nobody's ever managed to be fully present unless they're just
Right?
completely demented.
Yeah.
Now, my parents experienced dementia. They don't have any memory about what happened just 5 or 10 minutes ago, or ask him what did you eat for breakfast. I don't know. So
Hmm.
basically,
Hmm.
that's one form of presence. But even then, they have some kind of mental chatter going on, and so even then, there's not as much presence as people aspire to have. And what does it mean to be present?
I
The
think the
present
definition, I think, is a big key for sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The present moment is basically such a fleeting fraction of a split of a second between the past
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
future.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it's constantly moving. So when Eckhart and his wife Kim, or his partner Kim Eng, whom I interviewed also on my show, they talk about being present, being still. It's fool's errand. You cannot be present and you cannot be still. There is no life without movement. So basically,
Right.
on one hand, I have respect for what they're doing. On the other hand, I think it's a misguided way of looking at the whole notion of time. On the other hand, there are a lot of people talking about dreaming and how they want to manifest their dreams and how they want to live their dream lives. And they talk about, the law of attraction and various other things that are really appealing, but not many people actually manage to put it to good use. If there are
Right.
a lot of people could, would be living in a happier and healthier world, right? So, what's the problem? Well, the problem is that it's not easy to manifest your dreams. And what lucid dreaming gives you is the ability to become present in the dream. You actually awaken to the dreamlike reality and become actually quite present in it. And on the other hand, you still continue dreaming, which gives you the license to get as creative as you can be. Sky is the limit, it's your dream.
Right.
And as you're doing that, you're still maintaining that presence of mind, that lucidity, that literally, as I said, brings the best of both worlds together. That
Hmm.
literally gives you that ability to experience being present and dreaming and realize I am dreaming right now. I am living my dream life. I don't have to fantasize about something other than what is, because what is already my dream. Now,
Yeah, and I think,
uh,
maintaining that, there are certain rules you still in this dream need to abide by, like gravity.
Funny you should mention that.
Right. Um, so so I mean, from stuff I've looked at, that your bio and stuff, and doing some research on you, you've trained both Eastern traditions and Western psychology. Where do you see these two worlds clashing most dramatically, and how do you reconcile that tension when you're in your teachings? Like, how do you um, resolve that in the fusion of the disciplines that you bring to the table?
just like I was talking about, bringing the best of both worlds in terms
Mhm.
of presence and dreaming and manifesting, you can also experience some type of overlap of Eastern and Western ways of thinking about this. So rather than clashing, as you put it, I always prefer to focus on what it is that is similar. You know,
Okay.
if you want to wage
Mhm.
wars, go ahead and focus on that which is different between you and the other parties' perspectives. If you want to wage peace, you focus on
Find the
similarities.
similarities. Right.
Yes, and so I don't mind conflict. I don't mind critical thinking, but I don't think there is a real clash. I think there is
Okay.
an overlap, and depending on which perspectives you come from, you may experience the same thing differently.
Hmm.
For example, uh, the psychology and Western way of thinking in general thinks that there are certain healthy states of consciousness and there are certain unhealthy states of consciousness. And so they're trying to fix the unhealthy ones and get the person to experience healthy states of consciousness. Uh, there is a wonderful Tibetan tradition, a spiritual school of thought called Dzogchen. It's the school of great perfection. And it literally says everything is perfect with some room for improvement, sometimes lots of room for improvement. But acceptance is something that Western psychology is not really big on. However, it's really hard to pay attention to something if you don't accept it. And what do we need to pay attention to the most? Ourselves. Why?
Mhm.
Because we are on the journey of self-actualization, self-mastery, self-knowledge. How do you get to know yourself if you don't pay attention to yourself? There's no way to know anything if you don't pay
Yeah.
attention to it. So we need to pay attention to ourselves a great deal more than what most people allow themselves to. They feel guilty. They feel like I'm going to be judged for being self-centered or whatever.
Right.
So they
Right.
basically prevent themselves from paying attention to themselves. Now, what happens when you pay attention to yourself? Well, you get to know the subject. And this is actually a fantastic kind of a ontological exploration of integration of subject and object in one. So we can go as deep as the rabbit hole
Well,
goes to explore
so
that. Yeah.
so the question I have is because what I'm hearing from you then is that looking at current the present time, the way society has been polarized in many different things, not just politically, and we can actually look at the some of the ongoing wars and things like that, where you're saying is that nobody wants to step into that and find that commonality. They're so, for the lack of a better term, they're so stuck on themselves or their belief system that they refuse to let anything else enter into their sphere of, and so they become polarized. And so then you have these two, this conflict. And what you're saying is that, to get those two uh societies or those two belief systems to come together and find out what is the same about each one. And
Yes.
as you
And
said, is that if you want to make peace, you need to start with, we have this in common, we have this in common, we have this in common. Oh, you like chocolate? I like chocolate. Oh, you know, you like beer? I don't like beer. I like wine, or whatever the case. But finding those commonalities as human beings so that we can resolve the differences, or at least come to, what would you call it? I mean, would you call it a compromise between
no,
people?
I call it harmony.
Okay, better,
And
much,
the
much
reason
better.
why I call it harmony is because it is a lot easier to experience that which most people won't even believe is possible. How can we
Hmm.
live in harmony if there are all these conflicts and conflicting beliefs and values, and everyone is
Mhm.
um, entrenched in their perspective?
Hmm.
Well, it's because we are paying attention to the appearances, to the superficial
Okay.
forms of things.
Hmm.
Human awareness, human perception has easier time paying attention to the outer shapes and forms of things as compared to the true essence of things. Well, but our true essence is the same. We all have the same human nature. As a
Right.
matter of fact, if we dig deeper, we realize we are energy beings having human experiences, connecting with that essence of each and every one of us, that energy that we all are, and everything around us is. That's the tricky part
Right.
because most people say, but wait a moment, you're talking about energy, but I'm surrounded with hard objects and I feel like my body is a solid object.
Hmm.
To which, of course, I say, well, you may think you're a solid object. Don't
Right.
you know that most of human body is actually fluids? Yeah, I heard it somewhere in high school. Well, did you hear it in high school also that virtually everything in the universe is energy, just different shapes and forms of it?
Hmm.
Well, yes. So most people have heard of it. Most people have some glimpse of this true essence that they either heard of or maybe even experience it once in a blue moon. What we are learning is how to make it a lifestyle, how to make it into
Hmm.
an ongoing spiritual practice, and how to make it so that it would be influencing everything we do in our lives, how we communicate with other people, how we express ourselves, how we make living. Basically, that is an enlightened way of being.
Hmm.
Now, when you live an enlightened way of being, doesn't mean that you will have no challenges, but you no longer see them as problems. You
Right.
perceive them as fantastic learning opportunities. You recognize them as lessons that you dreamed up for yourself. Basically, if you are experiencing a challenge in a dream, nobody is doing it to you.
Yeah.
The deeper
Hmm.
aspect of your
Right.
consciousness, the dreamer within you, is dreaming it up for a reason. So accepting the challenge and actually looking at the learning opportunity within is something that people are beginning to talk about nowadays, positive psychology, the growth mindset are all
Mhm.
about
Hmm.
recognizing the opportunities for growth within the challenges or problems. Well, for good reason. It works.
Right.
You literally can develop a way of life living problems free. Does it mean that you have no challenges? No, but you don't perceive them as problems. You perceive them as
Right.
So is
learning.
that in your writings you write about navigating the darkness in your journey? Is that what that's talking about?
Darkness, I'm not sure exactly where in my writing you found that, but the idea is that we have some pitfalls, we have some challenges.
Hmm.
Let's see how we can stop putting a label. This is a bad thing. That's a problem that I need to either suppress or run away from or pretend it's
Hmm.
not happening. We need to pay attention to it. We need to
Sure.
learn as much as humanly possible from it. And in order to pay attention to something, you need to accept that. Otherwise, without acceptance, you can't focus your attention on the subject matter. So that
So that's the
acceptance,
first step, right? So that's the first step to finding their way back to this enlightened living. What if
yes.
you were to give like a sequence of events? So definitely self-awareness. What would be next?
Well, I actually love presenting it backwards.
Okay, cool.
What would it be like to experience enlightenment? Well, it would be like awakening in the dream. We were talking about Buddha, realizing,
Hmm.
oh,
Hmm.
I've been dreaming all along, and becoming so awake in this daily life as you've never been before. Even waking up in the morning doesn't compare.
Hmm.
However, you also realize that you are the dreamer of this dream,
Yeah.
which actually enables you to reconcile this perennial dualistic division between the creator on one hand and creation on the other hand. No organized religion, as far as I know, have managed to bridge them or reconcile this polarity. That's exactly what we do. This is Holy Grail. We literally experience oneness with between the creator and the creation because we
Hmm.
realize we are not separate from the creation. We are one with the world, the dream that we are living in, one with the universe. And also the dreamer that's dreaming it up, basically universe dreaming itself into existence. I don't think there is a guy wearing a nightgown somewhere on a cloud that's dreaming it up. It's basically the universe is dreaming itself into reality. Well,
Mm.
isn't it fascinating? So you literally experience that sense of oneness and awakening. Now, how do you get to that point? Well, that's exactly why lucid dreaming is so helpful. Why? Because it gives you the experience of awakening in the dream. And if you just simply awaken enough time in your night dreams, you'll be able to translate a similar experience into your daily life.
Hmm.
So people who practice lucid dreaming actually are onto something.
Hmm.
Fortunately, a lot of people who practice lucid dreaming think, oh no, I can manipulate my dream. I can turn it to be what I want. And as I was just talking about, acceptance is number one step. If we've done the preliminary steps, the preliminary practices, we arrive to the practice of lucid dreaming with that sense of acceptance and ability to be in the flow.
Cool.
The ability to be in the flow is what you would want to experience when you're in harmony with existence, with reality. So essentially, we learn and practice how to awaken and how to be in the flow. What else do we practice in our lucid dreams? Well, we practice recognizing that everything is energy. In dreams, however tangible things may appear to be, it's all energy of consciousness, right?
Hmm.
What else is it going to be made of? So even your dream body is made of energy of consciousness. That's exactly why I was also talking about how paying attention to your dream body, it facilitates lucidity.
Hmm.
You can also experience other fascinating things. For example, you realize dream characters in your dreams, even though they may be in conflict with you, or they may look very different, or just look like maybe not even a character. Maybe it's a house, or maybe it's a tree, but it's still a product of your dreaming consciousness. So it actually has consciousness in it. It's the conscious energy manifesting in this particular shape and form. And what we learn is how to possibly step into the identity of a tree or identity of a house, or at least a different character in our dream drama to experience it from a different perspective. Now,
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
that's like a massive dissociation. Dissociation meaning not being associated with your own perspective, but actually being able to step out of your perspective, get out of your rut, so to speak, or not
Yeah.
being so entrenched in it,
Mm-hmm.
and step into another dream character's shoes and see the world through their eyes. Now, that also gives you access to tremendous a variety of experiences and perspectives. It gives you a greater sense of compassion. And in general, it expands your consciousness manifold. I don't
So
know
in
any way
so
to,
in so in short, you've basically just solved world peace.
indeed.
So if I mean honestly, if hypothetically, if we are able to get two world leaders to practice this and and in their lucid dreaming step into the identity of their opponent
Yes,
and such and understand and see the world through their eyes and like, oh, now I get it. Now I'm
right.
starting to understand, and vice versa, then they would find that commonality and say, okay, now I know how to approach my opponent. And I use
And they
that
no longer perceive him as an opponent. They perceive him
exactly.
as another dream character.
Exactly.
It's just like in law, instead of litigating and being on two opposing ends of the table, where basically the two opposing parties want maybe the same thing, just one wants it or the other wants it. So basically, it's a zero-sum game.
Hmm.
There is a different approach called mediation, where you say, look, the same thing that you want is on the table. It's just you're sitting on two opposing sides of the table. How about you just
Hmm.
scoot over and sit right next to each other? You want
Right.
both the same thing. Well, go
Right.
for it. See how you can actually experience it together.
Hmm.
Well, the same thing with world leaders, the same thing with everyone else. Basically, they're just too entrenched, too associated with their perspective, with their needs, with their values, and they don't recognize the values, needs, and perspectives of others.
Correct.
Essentially, most people have tendency to dissociate when they actually would benefit from greater association, and they
Hmm.
have tendency to get more associated when they would actually need to dissociate. Do you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
our
Powerful.
negotiations often you become more and more associated with your perspective, thinking that I am the right one and that person is wrong or their
Correct.
opponent, basically getting stuck in a perspective.
Hmm.
And what I'm talking about is actually elevating yourself above your entrenchment and see how you can get bird's eye point of view, how you can perhaps even integrate both perspectives. I have a special meditation practice that is outside the scope of this particular interview, but it actually enables you to experience exactly that integration instead of polarization.
I love this. Okay, well, we're getting down to the wire here. So Lama, tell everybody how they can find out more about you. Do you have a book out yet? Are you working on a book?
I have several books.
Yeah.
I
So
have a
tell
book called I
where
have a
can
book
everybody find
called
your information?
I have a book called The Art of Being in the Flow. I have the book called Qi Dao, Tibetan Shamanic Qigong. I have the book called Manifesting the Life of Your Dreams. I'm working on another book called Abundance Through Being in the Flow.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that's coming down the pike later on resilience. One of the key
Yeah.
traits that people don't recognize that they need is often resilience.
Mm-hmm.
I actually co-founded the Resilience Center, and I'm also working on a World Resilience Summit, which will be
Hmm.
held in April 25, 26, 27 of this year. And in general, we're helping people become more resilient, which means overcoming adversities, seeing problems as learning opportunities, and developing the ability to get back on your feet if you get knocked down or tripped over something. So essentially, develop the ability to be more graceful and conscious, even when the going gets tough. When going gets tough, most people get reactive because they're
Right.
outside of the comfort zone and they basically are struggling. Well, the comfort zone is not a given. We can actually expand the comfort zone. We can make it grow bigger, like consciousness. We can expand consciousness. When we expand the comfort zone, the same things that used to bother us no longer bother us.
Right.
They're within the comfort zone. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel like it's a trigger any longer.
Yeah.
But very few people think about resilience in this context or in this way. And so this is something that I find really simple to understand, really easy to transmit, and would transform people's quality of life on the spot.
Fantastic. And that's actually what first drew me to your work. And then when we had our call, I you were there's so many different dimensions to you. I'm just like, this is amazing. This is man, it's absolutely amazing.
Mhm.
So, and we're gonna put your website in the comments, and because you have so much stuff, so many programs in your store, covering so many different ideas of what we talked about today. So this is definitely some place where somebody wants to go. Can they find your books on Amazon as well?
Yes, they can.
Okay, fantastic.
My
So
books, my videos,
okay,
way back when people were buying
yeah.
DVDs, I produced a
Yeah,
DVD called
yeah,
Harmonious
but
Color Movement. It
yeah, but
was from
it's hard to find DVD players now.
Players.
exactly, but it's
Lo-
available for streaming.
All right. So, Lama, I want
And
to thank you so very much for taking this time with us and
Mhm.
sharing your knowledge. I we're gonna be this interview is gonna drop just before your conference. So, I really urge everybody to check out all the information and try to get involved with this. If anything, he has a program just on dream yoga. And that sounds absolutely fascinating. So it's a great place to
just,
start.
just go
And
to dreamyogacoaching.com. I'm actually the
Awesome.
creator of this profession of dream yoga coaching. Check it
Nice.
out. There is also dreamyogacourse.com.
mhm.
Guess what that's about?
All
It's an
right.
online course on dream yoga.
So the man likes his URLs. We got it.
I own like 15 different URLs.
All right, sir. Thank you so very much for sharing this time with us. And
It's
we
been a
wish you the
pleasure.
best of luck and definitely keep in touch.
For
And
sure.
when
We'll definitely have you on again. There's so many things that you talked
yeah,
about that I'm like, ooh, I could go into that, but
exactly.
we
I
just
was
don't have
like,
the
that's a
time for it.
show, that's a show,
Yeah.
that's a show, that's a show.
Yeah.
So I think we've
I'm
got
going to
a
keep you busy, guys.
great relationship building here. So
Awesome.
thank you very much, and you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank
Be
you.
well.
All right. And